Building a house with straw bales seems like it might be easy, maybe even foolish, like the little pig who built his house out of straw and the big bad wolf blew it down. But here we're building a wood-framed house that's insulated with a thick straw bale to make a super warm home, and then it's clad with 1.25 inches of lime plaster, which actually makes it more like the little pig's brick house that stood strong and couldn't be blown down. In order to build a straw bale house that can stand the test of time, it's important that a few important details are built right. Today we're going to talk about how we get a secure connection to the framed wall system and prevent the bales from getting wet. We're going to talk about the steps we take to make sure there's no big gaps without insulation where we can fit a straw bale. And we talk about how we make sure the bale wall can breathe if and when it does get moisture inside. I'll show you how we frame windows and doors so that they're strong, airtight, and look good when they're finished out. And finally, I want to talk about how we stop the bales at the top of the walls and get a tight, pre-compressed straw bale wall system. Ready? Let's dive in. Welcome to Heirloom Builders. We're all about the details that make a high-quality, energy-efficient home more affordable. Our homes are simply well-built. The way I see it is, we could build maybe 6 to 10 high-quality homes every year, but if we can help people like you understand the process and the key details that go into building a high-quality, energy-efficient home, then we can make a bigger impact by contributing to thousands of homes being built to a higher standard of quality around the world. Today, we're building a straw bale house, step by step. At this point, it's really exciting. We've got our frame built and we're under roof. It feels like we're ready to stack straw bales, but not quite. We've got some really important details to knock out before we stack straw bales. Today, we're talking about bale prep, the steps we need to take to make sure we have a well-built house that's going to keep rodents out, be very airtight and energy efficient, and finish out easily. The first and possibly most important thing is to get a secure connection to your framing. We use a 4x4 treated mud sill and place it at 18.5 inches inside from the exterior wall. Since a straw bale is 18 inches wide, it's already pretty stable as it is with such a wide base, but it still needs to be anchored to the framing so it doesn't slip during earthquakes. We use 20-penny nails attached every 6 inches and staggered on both sides of each 4x4. This anchors it really well into place, like cleats. The second thing you want to do is to prevent the bales from getting wet. So we use 57 stone, in this case leftover from our French drain, and place it in between the two 4x4s to act both as a capillary break to prevent moisture from wicking up through the concrete, create a solid support for the bales, and also to provide a place for water to drain if there's ever a leak in the walls. The third thing is that we want to fill spaces that we can't fit straw bales. Depending on your framing, you may have places that you won't be able to access once you stack straw bales. In our case, we have ceiling joists from the loft floor above that run parallel to our wall. So we need blocking and batt insulation inside that floor joist bay, since we can't squeeze a bale into that space and it's going to be impossible to get insulation in there after we stack straw bales. Once we block, we can snap a chalk line for reference and know how far out we need to hammer the bales. We also have a bond beam made out of a double 2x10 that's going to split the height of our gable wall so that we can stack bales from 8 feet up and also create a rigid wall system since it's a vaulted wall. So we need to be able to insulate that joist bay inside the bond beam, because once we stack straw bales up to it, we're not going to be able to get insulation in there afterwards. So in this case, the cheap and easiest thing to do was to use some scrap fiberglass insulation to fill that joist bay. We also needed to add in between the two 2x4 sills on top of that bond beam, because once we stack straw bales on top of it, there's going to be no way to get insulation in there afterwards. And so we don't want an empty airspace in between those two sills. So we go ahead and fill that up. You could easily substitute slip straw or any type of other denim insulation or whatever kind of scraps you have that would insulate that space. You can use flakes of straw too. We chose fiberglass insulation for this space for the increased R value and the ease in filling all these spaces completely without gaps. Let's talk about breathability. If you're building a super insulated home, it's pretty important to make sure it's airtight. In fact, 30% of energy loss comes from air leakage. So the tighter your home is, the more energy efficient it is. But it's absolutely essential to make sure your roof and walls are breathable. Moisture is going to find its way in one way or another into the roof and wall systems, whether it be from a leak through the roof or indoor air moisture from hot showers migrating through the walls. We've got to be able to get that moisture out. So in our roof system, we use insulation baffles in between the rafters. This is going to allow air a place to escape through the top, up against the roof sheathing. Moisture naturally migrates upwards. So if we create that airspace at the top, moisture will have a way to escape out through our vented ridge cap. In this case, we're using open cell spray foam to insulate our roof system, since it's permeable to moisture, and it'll allow any of that moisture that's in both the bale walls or the roof system to escape through the vented ridge cap. Plaster itself is breathable so long as you use clay or lime plaster. Cement-based plasters or stucco don't breathe and will trap moisture inside your walls. Clay and lime plasters are hygroscopic and release moisture that builds up inside your walls. Windows and doors are an essential design element of every home. Good ones allow light, ventilation, and entry and egress into and out of your home. Better windows and doors are airtight, insulated, and function well. It's not easy to build better windows and doors in straw bale construction. Today, I'm going to show you how we do it. Like a conventionally wood-framed home, there needs to be a header above the windows and doors to support the weight of the walls and roof above. In a straw bale home, our insulation is the straw bale, and it sticks out way past the wall framing that carries the load of the roof above it. So we need a header that sticks out enough to support the weight of the straw bale wall above windows and doors. I used a solid oak lintel on my straw bale home, attached it to the backside of the wood header, and extended it 12 inches on each side to bear on the straw bale wall below it. It saved me some money since I have a sawmill and can make the wood slabs, and it looks beautiful. But to pay someone else to sawmill, dry, shape, sand, and finish would cost about $1,000 per window. And it's prone to air leakage because it's difficult to trim around a wood penetration through a curved straw bale opening. So here we use a box beam style header that's cheaper to build, easier to air seal, and open for insulation. We frame it with 2x4s on edge and a 1/2 inch plywood on the top and bottom. This gives it rigidity to support the weight of the straw bale wall and plaster above it. The stud bay in this box beam header can be insulated with fiberglass or straw. We leave the top plywood off so we have a space to attach the header to the 4x4 wall framing. Then we insulate it and nail on the top ply. We framed this box header 14 inches deep instead of the full 18-inch width of the straw bale, so we could curve a nice 4 to 5 inch radius in the bottom of the bale above it. In order to hold the header in place, we install a 2x6 trimmer or jack stud below it. This jack not only supports the header above it, it also becomes the nailing surface that will attach our plaster lath and trim to get an airtight, crack-free wall system around your windows and doors. When installed, the window will cover up most of the 2x4 wall stud, so we use a 2x6 to extend 2 more inches and have plenty of surface to attach plaster, trim, and lath. The sill framing can be 2x4s since they only need to support the window. The finished sill is wood, and to simplify the bale stacking, we'll install that framing after the straw bales are stacked in place. Doors are framed mostly the same way as a window with a box-style header. Most residential doors swing in, and it's really nice when they can swing open past 90 degrees to give you plenty of room to move in and out of the house. On a straw bale house, the walls are 18 inches thick, so if you don't give the doors a little room, they'll slam into your wall, damaging the door, the plaster, or both. I neglected this detail on my home and vowed never to do it again. The easiest way to give your door enough room to open freely is to attach the plaster backing to the outside face of the 4x4 king studs on both sides of the door opening. Keep in mind that if you do this, you open up the possibility of the thermal bridging of heat that can easily pass through that 4x4 door framing. Here, we bought pre-hung doors with a 7-inch jamb extension to inset the door an extra 2.5 inches to allow for a strip of rigid foam insulation and plywood backing to cover up and insulate the 4x4 post. This gives us a surface to attach the door casing after the door is installed. Just remember to frame the box beam header up an extra 3.5 inches above the rough opening height to allow your finished door casing to go all the way around the doors, including at the top. One last detail to consider with this approach is that rigid foam insulation you add around the door opening will conceal your point of attachment for the plaster trim unless you use a 2x8 or wide piece of plywood. We ripped a 12-inch wide piece of plywood. Okay, so we talked about how to get a secure connection to the framing at the bottom of the wall with cleats, but how do we fasten and secure the top of a straw bale wall system? Gravity is working against us here. Over time, the straw bales will settle under their own weight and cause cracks in the plaster finish. In a worst-case scenario, the bale wall could settle so much it loses its friction connection to the framing and topple over in a hurricane-forced wind. We do 2 things to prevent this from happening. To prevent the walls from settling over time, we frame our wall heights a little lower than necessary to place the final course of bales at the top of the wall. That way, we have to wedge and hammer the final bale to effectively pre-compress all the bales in the wall. If at all possible, measure the straw bales you intend to use prior to determining your framed wall height so that you can accommodate them easily. Here, we were forced to stack the final course of bales vertically to get the compression we needed. We had to buy bales from a new source since our traditional supplier had none available. A typical rule of thumb is that each course of straw bales will shrink or compress a 1/2 inch over time. So if you have 8 courses of bale on your wall, you should frame your wall 4 inches lower than the top of that theoretical bale height. That's a 1/2 inch per bale times 8 bales equals a 4-inch drop. Secondly, once we install the bales, we hammer in a 2x4 at the top of the bales to further compress the straw bales and provide a place to nail or secure welded wire reinforcement that holds the bales in place. The welded wire is attached with staples and provides a tremendous amount of insurance against plaster cracks. It gets a little trickier baling up to a vaulted ceiling, but the same rule of a 1/2 inch compression per bale applies. Here we attach a 2x4 stud to each rafter, hanging it down to a point 2 inches above that pre-compression wall height. Then we attach a 2x4 plate to the bottom of the vertical legs and a 1/2 inch plywood underneath that. It's helpful to drill big holes in the plywood so that the bale wall can breathe moisture up and out through the roof ventilation system. Finishing the bale walls on a gable end or where the ceiling joists run parallel to the exterior wall, you will likely have to provide horizontal blocking between the parallel framing so you can add a Bale Stop or compression block parallel to the top of the wall. So this is our Bale Stop. So you put the profile on there for what reason?
If you're going flat this way, all these ends of the straw bale, you push it up against the other bale and you shove the bale that way. So it's this little ramp here. We can slip underneath them. Still gotta kind of get started.
we've already got markings on the joists. A little black mark shows us where the top of the bale wall needs to stop. Just plumb with this 4x4 mud sill right here, all the way up. So not only does this help compress the bale wall and keep it in position, it also gives us a place to nail. It also gives us a place to nail our plaster, lath, and trim at the ceiling. Because our ceiling will be drywall in here, and then our walls are plaster. So
We need a good caulk joint.
for expansion and contraction to keep it from cracking.
Okay, so now we know how to frame a strong straw bale wall system with beautiful windows and doors that's going to be tight and yet breathable, and one that should last hundreds of years. Are you ready to stack some straw bales? Check out the video here. If you got a roll, please make sure to leave us a like and subscribe on your way out. Thanks for watching. Peace out.